Alaska's north coast. For 8 months of the year, the mercury never climbs above freezing. Yet each summer, the sun never sets for 3.5 months. The desolate landscape becomes a haven for new generations of hundreds of species. The animals come here from thousands of miles away to take part in an extraordinary banquet provided by the land and the sea. Northern Alaska straddles the continental divide along the Brooks mountain range. All streams flowing northward from these mountains empty into the Arctic Ocean. Only a few thousand people live in the last great wilderness of North America. This is the home of the Inupiat Eskimos. In their language, Inupiat means the real people. Nature has taught them a deep and abiding respect for the Alaskan wilderness. It is their life. April. Cracks begin to separate the sea ice offshore, producing leads or openings which become pathways eastward for migrating animals and birds to follow. Spring is here. A mother polar bear and cub emerge from their den after a long, lean winter of hibernation. This mother has lost 1/3 of her weight. A polar bear's stealth and patience are legendary when it hunts. Their prey must be vigilant and quick. Male polar bears lead solitary lives as they need large areas in which to hunt. But even polar bears appreciate occasional company. It gives them reason to play. Also following open leads are beluga whales. They travel in groups northward from the Bering Strait. Belugas are the only whales with unfused vertebrae in their necks. This enables them to turn their heads and look around for fish. The social structure of these whales is not yet understood and has only begun to be studied. As the days grow longer, temperatures rise, winds and currents change. The polar pack ice begins to move. These floating ice fields are often 12 feet thick and several square miles in size. Guided by the currents or wind, they can drift many miles out to sea, or within a matter of hours, shift direction and head toward shore. When the pack ice collides with shore-fast ice, it piles up, creating pressure ridges up to 50 feet high. The Inupiat have learned to read the movements of the sea ice. They watch it and wait. In early May, bowhead whales migrate north through open leads from their winter habitat in the Bering Sea. They are the only species of baleen whale that thrives year-round in Arctic seas. They can grow to be 60 feet long and weigh 50 tons or more. A recent census indicates that 8,000 of these whales exist in the western Arctic. They feed on brit, different species of shrimp-like creatures whose numbers swell in the summertime. The brit feeds on huge amounts of algae growth, spurred on by the amount of sunlight in the Arctic this time of year. Other organisms that depend on these clouds of nutrients include the Arctic jellyfish, which drifts with the current just under the ice. Like the Inupiat, bowhead whales follow the movement of the ice. They constantly adjust their migratory route to follow its path. The whales are able to dive for 20 minutes or more before taking another breath. It is thought that they communicate with each other to find the best routes under the ice. Bowhead's vocalizations travel for many miles underwater. For centuries, Inupiat have hunted bowheads each spring. Their coastal communities are situated at key locations along the whale's migration routes. This society still looks to the ocean for the majority of its food. Bowheads can see what lies on the surface of the ice. So to hide from the whale's view, the hunters place ice blocks in front of the camp to create a sort of blind for the whales. Much of the time, the crew watches and waits for a whale to surface within paddling distance. The whalers must approach the whale very closely in order to harpoon it. Often the whale swims out of range, making this difficult to do. This crew will try again. Morgan Solomon is a member of this whaling crew. He has hunted most of his life.
Here in the North Slope, we don't have gardens like the lower 48 people have. The garden is out here in the ocean. And when the spring comes in, the whales bring with them the birds, the Arctic thing that we depend on so much here in the North Slope. We get our seals and ugrooks, the bearded seal, and this is the only garden that we have.
In early May, while the Arctic coast is undergoing its spring thaw, hundreds of miles to the south, another scene unfolds. In south-central Alaska and Canada, swans and geese have just arrived for a short rest after a 3,000-mile migration from the southern U.S. The ponds and rivers are nearly ice-free. These Canada geese use the areas as a staging ground for a few days, feeding on grasses and whatever they can find. This will help build the fat reserves they need to fly the rest of the way to their breeding grounds on the north coast. Deltas and bays here also offer ideal resting and foraging sites for millions of shorebirds. Before continuing their migration north, they stop to pluck small clams and invertebrates from the mudflats for a few days. Western sandpipers, dunlins, golden plovers, among other species, have just flown thousands of miles from the Pacific coast in South America. Once they've eaten, many tuck their bills under a wing and stand on one leg to conserve body heat. Like humans, these birds shiver as an involuntary way of warming themselves. In early June, many of these shorebirds continue over the rugged Brooks Range in order to reach their breeding grounds on the north coast. The Pipeline Haul Road also traverses these mountains and ends up on the north slope, an area that slants gently down onto the Arctic coastal plain. To some, the north slope means the oil fields. To others, it means the last great wilderness of North America, a place with an uncertain destiny. The coastal plain stretches 700 miles across from east to west. It is known as the tundra, where only sedges, lichens, berries, and willow shrubs grow. Trees cannot grow here because the ground is permanently frozen, making it impossible for tree roots to take hold. But the sparse vegetation provides exactly the nourishment that the caribou needs. A member of the deer family, the caribou has been here since before the ice ages and continues to thrive. In early June, caribou give birth within a one-week period so that more calves are available than their predators, wolves and grizzly bears, can possibly kill at once. This survival strategy reduces the overall mortality of calves. Adult females nurture their calves in relative safety for several weeks until they gain the strength they need to move with the herd. This calf was born only 2 hours ago. Its instinct is to lay perfectly still to avoid detection by predators. Meanwhile, its mother is in another location in order not to draw attention to her calf. A few minutes later, the mother returns. Her calf is still weak and barely able to walk. But the herd is on the other side of the river, so the mother attempts to draw the calf across. The mother repeatedly demonstrates how the calf should cross. Finally, the calf lies down to sleep, and the mother crosses to the other side to feed. Not far from the calf, a willow ptarmigan, an Arctic resident, feeds on willow leaves from last winter's foliage. Even in early June, it still carries its winter white plumage. The Arctic fox, another Arctic resident, will soon shed its winter coat. It looks for a meal, usually lemmings. Lemmings come up from their winter burrows and run through interconnecting tunnels in the snow and runways above ground. This animal does not hibernate, but stays active all year long, feeding on grasses and moss. Several hours later, the caribou cow returns to try to draw her calf across the river once again. But the calf is still reluctant. Its instinct to survive is strong. The mother gives up. They venture off to find another herd on this side of the river. Calves nurse on their mother's milk, but begin eating grasses and lichens within a few days of their birth. Their long legs have grown strong, and the youngsters are eager to play. All this running will give calves the skills they need to evade predators later. It's an idyllic place to begin their lives. All that could change, however, should this calving ground be converted into an oil and gas field. No one could predict then where these caribou would give birth. By early June, migrating birds arrive from their rest stops further south. The Lapland longspur is one of the first, flying in when the temperature still hovers around freezing. This is one of the Arctic's only true songbirds. The males stake out a territory and constantly reinforce it with their call. The females arrive a few days later and find mates immediately. Using grasses, sedges, and feathers, they carefully construct bowl-shaped nests for their thumbnail-sized eggs. The short Arctic summer forces the longspur to condense the breeding and nesting period into 4 weeks, about half the time of birds in warmer climates. By mid-June, the Arctic tundra is almost free of snow, and the meltwater has collected into small, shallow ponds. The water stays at the surface because it can't penetrate the permanently frozen ground. These ponds are a breeding ground for vegetation and insect larvae, such as mosquitoes and flies. Thousands of these ponds stretch across hundreds of miles of tundra, providing a rich smorgasbord for more than 150 species of migrating birds. Arctic terns, Sabine's gulls, king eider ducks, and old squaws breed here, as do geese such as brant, white-fronted geese, Canada geese, snow geese, and tundra swans. Another reason so many birds nest here on the tundra is that there are relatively few predators and plenty of territory. It's not uncommon for a pair of nesting birds to claim an entire pond to themselves. Courtship is brief and often dramatic. These buff-breasted sandpipers have migrated north 7,000 miles from the pampas of Argentina. Here on the tundra, the males seem to dance on their wings, displaying their silvery linings in hopes of attracting a female. Shorebirds time their nesting periods to coincide with the upcoming insect hatches, a sure bounty for the bird's young. These black-bellied plovers migrate from the coasts of the U.S. and Mexico. Here they can safely lay eggs right on top of the tundra because they are so well camouflaged. When the plover feels threatened by a predator such as a fox, it sounds a series of alarm calls and moves off the nest immediately to draw attention away from its location. It further distracts by simulating an injury or indicating a nest in another location. Then, as the predator approaches, it scampers off and repeats the display even further away from its nest. It's a very effective defense. To avoid foxes, these red-throated and Pacific loons build their nests on islands. In summer, the Arctic fox has shed its thick white coat for a lighter gray one to acclimate it better to the warmer season. The fox establishes its territory by urinating in many spots. Howling lets other foxes know where it is while claiming its turf. The fox is not a picky eater. Fair game includes eggs, chicks, carrion, or adult geese. Lemmings are a favorite food. Often a fox will catch several lemmings in a location and retrieve them later to eat or carry them back to its pups. Many foxes make their dens in pingos, conical hills with a core of clear ice. They are formed when water is trapped under pockets of unfrozen ground. When the water freezes, it forces them upward. Some rise over 200 feet. At the surface, the soil is unfrozen, making them ideal locations for a den. On top of this one, an Arctic fox has made a network of tunnels for its young. Sleep for a busy parent consists of short naps in the midnight sun. This snowy owl has nested on another pingo. The owls perch atop the mounds and look for potential prey, such as lemmings. The chicks will stay on the nest for up to 6 weeks until they have enough feathers to fly. Some chicks hatch earlier than others, which accounts for the difference in size. To eliminate competition for food, the older ones will sometimes peck their younger siblings to death if there is little to eat. The males are all white, and females have more brown fleck marks on them. Late in June, the tundra falls quiet with nesting birds. Nests not attended to are often raided by this predator, the jaeger. This bird is notorious for raiding other birds' nests in the Arctic for their eggs. The Alaskan Arctic is a vital nesting ground for more than 150 species of nesting birds. Yet, despite the relative safety the Arctic provides, some species are endangered. One is the spectacled eider. Its dramatic decline in numbers is still a mystery. By implanting satellite tracking transmitters on these birds, scientists hope to learn more about their biology and migration patterns. The antennas transmit the information to satellite no matter where they go. In early July, Alaska's Arctic abounds with wildflowers. As an Arctic adaptation, many of these flowers grew their buds at the end of the previous summer, so that with the arrival of warmer weather, they are ready to bloom. These flowers are often resistant to frosts, which occur at any time during the Arctic summer. Depending on the amount of moisture in the soil, the number of wildflowers in the Arctic are as colorful as an artist's palette. The Arctic bumblebees possess a furry coat and also have glycogen, a sort of antifreeze that enables them to hibernate under the snow in winter. They help pollinate certain species of flowers. But many flowers rely on flies and the ubiquitous mosquito for pollination. Since butterflies cannot regulate their own body temperature, they often bask in the sun to warm themselves, especially when Arctic winds blow across the tundra. Some caterpillars pupate 2 years inside their cocoon before they emerge as Arctic butterflies. Also in early July, the caribou begin to gather into larger herds. The bulls move down from the foothills of the mountains onto the Arctic plain. Small groups of 50 to 100 all seem to converge. Within a few days, these herds amass into the thousands. Caribou herds seem to bunch up when the weather gets hot. 60 degrees in the Arctic is considered a heat wave. Arctic grizzly bears are attracted to the possibility of finding weak or young caribou. But by now, the herds are healthy and can easily outdistance the grizzly. Hordes of mosquitoes and flies swarm about them. After shedding their winter coats, caribou are especially vulnerable to hungry insects. Banding together helps them minimize the irritation from the bugs. Animals in the center are less bothered than the ones on the edge of the herd. They constantly shift in order to escape the insects. Some jump into rivers or find icy patches to try to lose the pesky bugs. Sudden snowstorms are not unusual. The cooler temperature or wind will disperse the bugs, giving the caribou a reprieve. The herds disband then, all heading in different directions. Caribou move over vast areas, covering thousands of square miles. 3 main herds of caribou move across Alaska's North Slope during the summer in numbers exceeding 500,000. Early July brings the hatching of both shorebirds and waterfowl broods. Most shorebird chicks leave their nests within hours of birth, never to return. It's a way to evade potential predators looking for nests. These pectoral sandpiper chicks are about the size and weight of a ping-pong ball. The tundra appears to be a jungle to them. Even climbing over blades of grass presents a challenge. The mother constantly calls to them, signaling which way to go. Within days, these chicks will be eating insects, and within 2 or 3 weeks, they will be flying. For now, they are content to stay warm under their mother's wing. Half a mile offshore from the Arctic coast is Howe Island. A colony of several hundred pairs of snow geese have their young here. Adult females form into multi-family broods on their journey from the island to the mainland. Individual family groups stay close to lakes and river courses that provide refuge from land predators such as the Arctic fox. The goslings will grow their flight feathers in 4 to 5 weeks. For now, they feed on roots, sedges, and grasses, and stay as close to their parents as possible. For the glaucous-winged gull, however, these goslings make a nice meal. The adults are wary of this threat. All it takes is an inattentive moment, and the gull snatches one. One life feeds another. The broods along the coast transform the tundra into a flightless nursery. Occasionally, a young bird like this swan cygnet will fall behind, and the brood will continue without it. Most of the time, the weak will fall prey. But sometimes, even they do catch up. By mid-July, the sea ice along the coast is rapidly melting. A strong south wind could take all this ice out to sea overnight. When it does, the Inupiat Eskimos know the walruses are not far away. This is Rossman Pituk from the village of Wainwright. He is out with his son looking for walruses. He knows the best way to locate them is to stop and listen. Sounds from a herd can travel for 10 or 15 miles across the water. The Pacific walrus travels offshore by riding on the moving pack ice up from the Bering Strait. These walruses are now far offshore and safe from predators like the polar bear. Herds congregate along with their young, born a few months earlier. They will feed in shallow waters looking for clams, sea cucumbers, and other shellfish. But now, much of the time, they spend basking in the sun and vying for space on these temporary islands of ice. The old bulls command many females. What sets them apart are their larger tusks and leathery skin. These animals can dive for 10 or 15 minutes. Young walruses cling on top of their mothers for safety and stay under their care for 2 years. Walrus herds travel on the ice through the summer into the high Arctic until the current shifts and brings the ice westward back to the Bering Strait in the fall. In the Arctic summer days, the sun never sets completely. It rises from just above the horizon to begin a new day. Inland from the coast, the mountains are home to bears, moose, and to gray wolves. Occasionally, a weak or young moose will fall prey to a bear. What begins as a feast for this grizzly also attracts a gray wolf. The bear won't tolerate it. But the wolf knows that this carcass will be around for a few days and will wait its turn. Grizzlies also eat a lot of grasses and berries. Arctic grizzlies usually weigh between 300 and 500 pounds, much less than the coastal brown bears. But these animals' size and power must still be reckoned with. This mother and her cubs are only a few miles from the Arctic coast. While cubs are usually more concerned with play, the mothers act like mothers. The muskox is a prehistoric relic, one of the oldest species to roam the Arctic. It once shared the Arctic plain with woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats. These animals are more closely related to goats and sheep than cows or oxen. They continually molt large clumps of their soft fur during summer. Herds of several hundred animals can be found in various parts of the state. Beginning in August, male muskoxen compete for females. Their flat head bones are designed for a hard battering. They rarely kill one another because they follow this ritual precisely. Their charges resemble medieval jousting and can last up to an hour. With their sharp horns, muskoxen form a wall to defend themselves against predators, usually wolves and men. The peaks of the Brooks Range are favored by Dall sheep. This is their kingdom. Their sure-footedness allows them to move about with the confidence few other animals share on steep, rocky inclines. Although they are relatively safe from predators, young lambs are sometimes prey for golden eagles, which could snatch one off a cliff and carry it back to their nests. By early September, the first storms arrive on the Arctic coast. This young snowy owl has left the nest and has almost learned to fly. Until it is ready, a parent watches over it. Flocks of waterfowl begin their migration south. A crew has just caught a whale. Fall whaling is done differently than in the spring. Without the presence of sea ice, whales migrate many miles offshore. So the crews use outboards and aluminum skiffs instead of paddles and skin canoes. And the whales are hauled onto the beach with a caterpillar. It's an exciting event when any whale is caught.
That's the tongue.
This 41-foot bowhead whale is completely butchered, feeding the community throughout the year, a part of ancient Inupiat tradition. September snows dust the mountaintops, marking the approach of winter. Willow ptarmigan have begun to grow their winter plumage once again. Caribou now migrate through mountain passes and feed continually to build up their fat reserves. The first snows hasten their trek to the boreal forests of the subarctic, where the feeding will be easier. By late October, the bulls will fight to win breeding rights. Along the Arctic coast, the land has become snowbound, and the Arctic Ocean is in the last stages of freezing. Ptarmigan now blend in with their surroundings. And the muskox will endure another 7 months of winter out in the open under the protection of its own fur. The polar bear seeks out whatever food it can find. In late November, the sun drops below the horizon for the last time and will not be seen for the next 2 months. The sun no longer sends its rays to the Arctic, but instead a solar wind, the aurora borealis. The aurora consists of bands of electrons attracted to the Earth's geopolar regions. The various colors are caused when these electrons become energized with molecules of different atmospheric gases about 80 miles above Earth. These mesmerizing displays can stretch across the Arctic sky. Much of the wildlife has now migrated to some other continent for the winter. As the seasons unfold, Alaska's Arctic will once again play host to one of the greatest migratory destinations on Earth. Proof that this polar environment is a vital link to the survival of several hundred species of animals. A place that is truly one of Earth's cradles of life.